Welcome back, everybody, to the CONEXPO-CON podcast. I am your host, as always, Taylor White. I do want to remind everybody that the countdown is officially on for CONEXPO-CON 2026, as it is returning to Vegas March 3rd to the 7th. It is honest when I say this, it is going to be bigger and better than ever. There's going to be over 2,000 exhibitors, 2.9 million square feet of equipment, tech, tools, and the brightest minds in construction. Tickets are going to go on sale in August. So now is the time to sign up for updates and get those discounts. Check the link in the description and make sure that you're on the list. I also want to thank our amazing partners over at John Deere Power Systems for helping us out today and helping us out on the podcast and being the sponsor of this show. With me today, I have the one and only Dervin Witmer, who has amazing branding on his machine. I can't wait to talk to him about that. Dervin, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
We were just chatting before, and you're Digging Excavating out of Michigan. We're very close in relation to geographically. I was just checking you out on Instagram, and you have quite the following.
Yeah, we got into it fairly early before kind of a lot of other construction companies at the recommendation of my brother-in-law. So it's been kind of a fun digital journey.
That's really cool. So you guys are out of Cassopolis?
Cassopolis.
I wasn't going to try to pronounce it. So you guys have your business in here, or you have your business here, Dig It Excavating. And then I guess in 2006, you added Pump That Septic service kind of to your brand.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. So you guys specialize in what? You guys are kind of the same as us, like excavation and septic systems?
Yeah. Our bread and butter is really septic, like complete septic service. Now we do get into excavating, a little bit of site work, a little bit of driveways, and do some demolition. But yeah, our bread and butter really has become a full service septic company. I started out as excavating. I got into the pumping side kind of accidentally because the jobs I was on at the beginning required some tank abandonment and stuff like that. So it was kind of an accident. And then all of a sudden it was like, wait a second, you can't advertise for a septic company with big excavators and piles of dirt, but then you kind of get into the dirt and the digging once you find some problems with septic systems. So they kind of feed into each other. So it was kind of like, let's split this out. Let's market it two different ways, kind of a Mr. Clean type septic company, and the Dig It, just some cool top of mind, easy to remember names and stuff like that. And it was always because of the change in advertising for digital. Let's come up with some names that are easy for Google searches and, kind of call to action words and stuff like that.
What made you want to do this 2005, start your own thing?
My background is actually electric motor industry. I work with my father. I was a third generation in an electric motor repair facility in Pennsylvania. Was married for about 6 years, and we're thinking about moving back to Michigan, where my wife was from. And I always enjoyed working for excavators in my area. Did that a couple times in high school. And we built a couple houses, my dad, brothers, and I. And I was always in the machines. I was always either clearing the roads, for the subdivision, or laying pipe or digging the basement. So, I was kind of like, it'd be kind of cool to start an excavating company. But there was a lot of competition in southeastern Pennsylvania where we were. I was working for my dad, had a pretty good job there managing that facility. So it was more like, if we're going to do a fresh start in another area, I think I would enjoy the outdoor, the machines, and dealing with people. And so in 2004, we sold our house in Pennsylvania that we had built and moved to Southern Michigan. I worked for a friend of mine doing framing first, just to kind of figure out, hey, is there any opportunities? And then there was. About a year later, they put in a sewer plant around here that serviced 5 all sports lakes they were trying to clean up. So that was built in Montville, and they ran the sewer to all these lakes. And then the opportunity was there to hook the houses up to tap in the street. So that was kind of my break. I had a couple contractor friends that said, hey, we want to stay, kind of the builder in these projects and the remodeler, but, we're not really an excavator. So we'll feed you the excavating side and septic. And so that's what I did I think I did about 150 homes in the first year and a half, where we were just short
Wow.
little runs, but sometimes in water tables and sometimes in really tight situations. But at the end of that year and a half, and I started to get into some septic systems and stuff. I was like, man, that was hard. I mean, those little jobs sometimes are just, you got to do them the right way. You got to do them safely. And I was just glad to be away from buildings and away from water and away from utilities every single day. You know, it's just nice to have a little more room. And that's where the pumping came in. Bought an old pump truck from a well driller friend of mine, or he recommended the unit from a friend of his. So just a little old Chevy top kick or something with a propane tank on the back that was converted to a septic truck.
No way.
Yeah.
That's wild.
So anyway, it wasn't much of a looker, but it carried the liquids.
That's cool.
One of the fun things was I always painted the trucks, even though they were old, and put the Digit logo on them to begin with. And so it was always like big. You could see the name, you know, driving down the road. So that was kind of my foray into excavating. And it worked 7 years by myself before I finally hired my brother-in-law, because you grow to a certain point where it's just like, I do not love this anymore. So when it was that point, I was like, you know, I think I need help. So that was the best thing I did. And then we just kept adding a few here and a few there. And my kids started to grow up and join the company too. So at one point a year ago, I had 3 of my kids working for me, and then my daughter got married. So now there's 2 boys yet, and then I have 6 kids total, but
that's awesome.
Yeah. I hear you talk proudly about your kids, and I'm like, yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it is. I just had my 3rd a month ago, so I'm ready to think of it.
Yeah, for sure. 3's the busiest, I say. After that, it doesn't matter anymore. Well, I asked my wife, but the busyness doesn't get any worse because, you know, once the kids get a little older, there's a little more help around, you know, and it's the camaraderie in a big family is awesome.
Oh, I totally 100% agree that it is awesome. And so you said your kids are like, they were helping out in the business?
Yeah. So as far as my kids working in the company, you know, Lucian, he's the oldest and the first one that got his CDL license after he came back from a couple years of Bible college. And he tore his ACL, and he was like, I got to get this thing operated. And thankfully, I think it was his right knee, so he could still clutch. But he said, it's kind of hard getting in and out of the truck. So he suggested, you know, that he go full time, because he had been doing our video editing and shooting, you know, just educational YouTube videos and stuff on the septic side, because that was one of the things that I saw was lacking in septic companies is any kind of digestible information for homeowners that don't know anything. And so we're like, look, let's be the authority on that in the area. So anyway, he tore his ACL, had to go in for surgery, and he's like, how about going full time as a marketing, you know, manager? And so I was like, okay, let's try it. And you know, that's the interesting thing about having your kids in a business, is that they start to think different than you. You know, it's like you have different ideas than your dad had for the company, you know, and this thing is my baby, but my kids are, you know, working their way into it. It's not their baby, but if they have a corner that they come to me and they say, hey, Dad, I think I can contribute in this capacity in a different way, in a greater way. And at the moment I was like, ooh, I don't know, you know, it wasn't my idea, but I was like, let's try it. You know, he went, got a surgery, went full-time marketing, and, you know, then the search for other drivers comes and stuff like that. But it's been good. You know, we took some courses with Marcus Sheridan on They Ask You Answer and Endless Customers now and stuff. And that's what really got him kind of, you know, let's update our website with information that is going to, you know, the AI is going to gather and make us the information hub of the area or the industry. He's taken the marketing side of our company to the next level, which was cool to see. My oldest daughter, since she was a teenager, was answering the phone. She was our dispatcher. So, you know, she was doing 4-H in school and stuff like that. And she was answering the phone. We homeschool our kids, so there was some flexibility there. So whether she was in the shop, usually in the afternoons, you know, while she was in high school, and then, you know, she would take calls in between, you know, doing school and other activities and stuff like that. And, you know, it's just kind of fun. When you're in the septic industry, the kids came to me and said, you know what, they like working for me, but how do you bridge this idea of like, my dad runs a septic company? Because so like, well, what are you doing? Oh, I work for my dad. What does he do? We work on septics, and it's kind of the end of the conversation. Oh, I'll bet that stinks, or something like that. So anyway, we've made a septic company with a really cool image and a really clean environment. And I said, well, just, talk about the idea that we're providing professional environmental services, and let's make it cool. If the industry has had kind of a mar and we tend to operate at the lowest common denominator, let's change that. You remember when the plumbing industry was sort of that way. Now everybody comes in looking like surgeons. So, the plumbing industry has changed their industry. And I was like, well, we can help change the septic industry too. She just got married. Olivia just got married last June, I believe it was. Yeah, she moved to Mexico. Her husband was from Mexico. So we had to replace her too. Then my next son, Isaiah, he still runs quite a bit of the septic inspection side of things. He runs the iPads, makes up the drawings of the systems, and runs the cameras and stuff like that. So it's been fun to incorporate the kids that, because some of my older employees, we don't have old employees anymore, but some of the older ones, they didn't like running iPads and, charging people with credit cards over, swiping and stuff. They're just like, nah, send the bill, But the young kids, and right now we have pretty much all of our employees are like 30 and younger. So we turned into a super young crew. And we took some green drivers, I hired a girl right out of Ivy Tech, a CDL class. I mean, they charged her way too much and didn't teach her hardly anything, but they gave her the certificate. And I knew her through 4-H, through my daughter. So good farm girl and stuff. So I knew she was good with equipment and trucks. So she's actually been one of my best drivers.
We did the same thing. We had a woman driver, and she's now a project coordinator for us, actually. She's amazing at it. But one thing that you touched on, I think, is important. I grew up in the world of septic systems as well, too. Like growing up, I was saying, like, what's your dad do for work? Well, he does septic systems. I always tell people now we're professionals in the wastewater industry, to make it not sound as bad. But I mean, like, it is the way it is, but we offer some more services and stuff now. But I would say 60% of our work is septic systems. And there's a lot more to it now. But one thing that you said that made a lot of sense was like your branding and how you present yourself is really clean. Your machinery, you're clean. Your guys and girls, they probably look nice and clean when they come to a job site. Everything is kind of down to your machinery, and everything is just presents yourself. And it doesn't have to be a dirty industry and showing up like this, or, like classic pumper truck guy that shows up, and he's kind of slobby looking or whatever. And like, it doesn't have to be like that. But like back to when you had your first truck, was you painted your truck to just kind of always stand out, and like your branding and your culture. So like, what are you cognitively doing with like being able to stand out on social media, make the industry look attractive? What would you say to somebody that does our industry, that's like have a really niche conversation, somebody that does septic systems? What advice would you give them as far as branding, social media, making it attractive?
Yeah, for sure. Taking a little bit from the stuff we've learned from Marcus shared, talk about the things that nobody's willing to talk about, sell in ways that no one is willing to sell. There's a third one, I forget what it is, but the whole idea is the industry pretty much is a private owner operator. Like I've seen on the back of a truck, like, nobody sticks their nose in my business. That's a funny slogan to be on the back, but that's kind of the mentality a lot of people in the septic industry. It's like, stay out of my business. I just want to make some money and then go fishing and drink some beer. But we're more like, we market ourselves from the side of, you would want one of my crew members to show up if your wife's at home by herself to service your septic tank. You would want us parked in your driveway because of the way our trucks look. You would want us to service your septic tank because there's a lot of crap that can go on because everything gets covered up. Homeowners don't know anything. How are they to verify whether you pumped all the solids out of the tank or not? How do they know if you are sloping the pipe the right direction until they cover it all up and you have a mess on a Saturday night? There's a lot of ways that you could cheat in this industry. And there were people doing that when we got into this. And, when we got the cameras and stuff like that, we started finding, pipes going uphill into the field. And so the tanks are over full. And it's like, did the guy just not bring his laser today or what? The guy moved into a different industry about a year and a half later. And I'm like, I'd like to think we helped him move out of the industry because he just wasn't being, honest. And so it's all of those things. It's, I think, more than trying to sell on our digital presence, now we educate. I used to say, I'm on my LinkedIn thing, oh, I own Dig It Excavating and I run Pump That Septic and I have this credential and that credential and the other credential. But now I'm just like, I provide homeowners and business owners with septic education solutions and stuff like that. It's like, we're here to help. Sure, we have to make money. We have to pay for our equipment in our shop and we have to pay our employees a good wage. But this is the way we're going to do it. We're going to be helpful. We're going to show you, we're going to be transparent. We show the process. We show the pipes. We show the tanks when we're done cleaning it. We take pictures and put it on the job tickets and stuff like that. So we're being very transparent, with the whole process from the beginning to the end. And that really sells people on our brand. So that kind of helps eliminate the bottom feeder type people. They're like, oh, how much? Oh, well, you're $2,000 more than the other guy. Fine. Hire him. I do not care. I'm not looking to work for you. And so I think just educating the buyer ahead of time helps them to see, oh, these guys are actually providing quite a bit of value and, they're transparent and they're going to do a good job. And so that sells you kind of ahead of the time. So, and that really, it all goes into the branding image. And so the more you can put your name out there, the more you can educate someone, the more you can make them feel like they've self-diagnosed and they've chosen you without the pressure. Who wants to go into to buy a new car and like the guy comes walking up to you in the first 30 seconds and he's like, hey, what car can I show you? I'm just looking at the cars. Like, let me decide which car I want and then I'll come talk to you. It used to be you walk into a mall and people are like, can I help you find anything? No, just let me look at my own shoes and look for my own pants or whatever. People, and they're becoming more and more private. It's really interesting with the whole digital phone. People want their space and they want to be able to make their decision without you breathing down their neck.
I totally agree. I think it's interesting. I like your point about not being the lowest guy. We're the same as well too, especially when clients reach out and say, oh, we're looking for, to get this work done. And then again, oh, the other guy was $2,000 cheaper. And it's like, okay, well, our knowledge is worth more than that. What we're going to bring to the table is worth more than that. Our guys that show up to site, you're going to feel comfortable with them. Our everything will look better. It'll be a cleaner job site. It's just, there's our value, right? But what I say to that too is, and a lot of the people that listen to the podcast, what do you do if you're the new guy starting out in septics that are in this industry? And maybe you do need to be the lowest guy to get the job. Or how do you sell yourself not being the lowest guy when you are just starting out? And then to add on to that, would you say starting out in the septic business is a good business to start out for the young guy or girl that's listening to this?
100%. So when we went into COVID, it was the best business to be in our area because everyone went home and, the businesses were shut, the schools were shut, but guess what wasn't shut? Your home. And guess what wasn't taking a break? Your septic system. And so all those septic systems that were on the brink just started to fail. And we kept the health of households going during COVID. And so everyone's going to have to flush their shit. Everyone's going to have to keep putting in septic systems. And so I say any type of a service industry that isn't discretionary spending is necessary. It's a good business to be in. And so I say to the guy getting into it, take everything you can get when you start, but do a very good job. Be consistent. Don't cut corners and be like, just try and get the jobs done quick. Just make yourself known as the quality guy or the responsive guy, the guy that answers his phone. All those basic things that sure, at the start, I took every single job I could get. And it was another, $500 in my pocket. And then find your niche, find what people are not doing well in your area or find a different service that complements it. That's how we got into hydrovac work, is that some of the jobs we were doing just weren't safe without hydrovac. And it really opened us up into a whole nother world. But you do have to be careful not to diversify so much that you lose your original niche. You lose your customer base. I mean, the people that put us on the map are the residential homeowners that needed septics. They are our bread and butter, and we're really thankful for them. And we try and, take care of those residential people. But, that gets you into the municipal work. And, so we do quite a bit of bulk hauling for lift stations when projects go bad in the small towns around here. So we're not known as the cheap guys, but we're known as the guys that will bring all our trucks out at the drop of a hat, and we'll work all night if we have to get the main break and stuff. So yeah, take everything you can get, but look for that spot where you can do a better job than everybody else in your area, and then hone in on that and figure out what your moneymaker is. Our moneymaker is not our septic tank pumping. It's our lowest ticket item. It's the least return on investment. I mean, we bring a $400,000 truck in, pump your tank out, and charge you $300. And, 100 something of that is going to disposal fees. But it's our salesmen. Our trucks are our salesmen. Our people are our salesmen. They're lead generators. They're finding problems. We're dealing with houses that are being sold on the market that need to be updated, before the bank will lend money and stuff like that. So I look at it as it's just a bunch of expensive salesmen running around.
Basically, yeah. At the beginning of the conversation, I said, septic system excavation. Are you looking to, in the future, expand and say, okay, maybe get some larger machinery to do some commercial site services or stuff like that? Or are you saying, hey, I want to perfect? Well, I think you have already perfected, but I want to stay within my niche that I have. I know the money that I can make in it, and I just want to stay where I am.
There's two things that are kind of in the back of I kind of reached my first goal, and that was to build an excavation company and then build a septic company that is reputable in the area and that does well at educating, and then get into hydrovac. Those were kind of my three big things. I've gotten into all of that. Now, the next level is we are just honing in on our SOPs, or the way we run the company, because it got bigger than just me and everything in my head, that everybody has to know what's in my head now. And so you put it out in procedures and stuff like that, and finding a good CRM and, a software program that can manage all of these accounts, because it's a lot of accounts to keep track of. I mean, we have 7,000 customers. And so it's like, I don't remember the houses that I pump anymore. I mean, I used to be like, drive past the house and like, yeah, I pumped that guy, I pumped that guy, I pumped that guy. But now it's like, my guys do stuff that I have no idea we even, people come up and say, oh, you pumped my tank. I was like, great. Did they do a good job? Yeah. And I never met the person, I never did the job. So the idea is, I would love to duplicate what we've done here, almost like a franchise. That's always kind of been in the back of my mind. Could I take our system and, do another location in Michigan? Could I do Southern California, or whatever, like if you want to retire in a warmer climate, how about we try Riverside, California or something, So that's kind of always in the back of my mind. And so that's why we're building out the website and the advertising and the branding in a certain way that you can just duplicate it. I would even sell the franchise to another, excavating company, because generally what happens is excavating companies are a person. I mean, like pumping companies are a person, and excavating companies can be that way too, at least the smaller ones. So they lack the marketing. They don't have the budget for the branding. Where if we could sell a package to someone, Bob's Excavating has a Pump That Septic franchise, and now they pump septic tanks too, or whatever. And that would be more the next generation that, didn't maybe start it, but the kids are involved and they're like, we want to expand this, but we don't have it figured out. We'd like to skip those 10 years of figuring it out, and we'll buy a franchise. That's one thing. Another thing is, yeah, for sure, on the commercial or municipal side, we're starting to look at bids that look a little bit scary to us and be like, wow, this is like, 4,000 feet of pipe and, a lot of site work. Well, how do you do takeoffs? And, where's GPS come in and all of this? I mean, we have autos. We have like 2D autos on our machines with Trimble earthworks and stuff like that. But that's pretty basic. I mean, that you run off a laser and then the machine goes auto from there. But it's not like you can just do topos in parking lots and, cut in curb and know where all your pipes are just through GPS or, Basin Rover stuff. So anyway, yeah, we're just kind of quoting some smaller commercial stuff, trying to figure out how to do the bigger quantity stuff. And the 315 is our biggest excavator.
I love that. The 315 is a fantastic machine.
Yeah, it really is.
You have an Encon on it, correct?
Yeah, we have Encon on the 315, the 310, and the 306. So we have three of them. and the guys love them. I won't say any one of our operators was scared of them. I learned on the 310. That was our first machine. And then it was too big for some of the repairs. We got to the 306 to do a lot of the septic repair stuff through, for real estate and stuff. And then the 315 we got when we started doing more commercial septic systems where we're setting 2,000 gallon tanks, multiple tanks and big fields and stuff. So, and then we do demolition with the 315 as well. So,
oh, nice with the grapple and stuff like that. What do you do in the wintertime when the weather doesn't turn as great?
we used snowplow, but it just beats everybody up. We're busy enough with the pumping stuff that the guys would rather go home early and get a good night's rest and come back and work in the cold with a good night's sleep than, oh yeah, I was up plowing all night. Plus, the cycles. I mean, you can make money for a year or two, and then the next 5, everybody's into it. And it's like, unless you're Glacier Snow Management that has figured out how to make a nationwide movement out
That's
of
wild.
it.
Yeah, I don't know about that. But even in our industry too, I like that comment you made, like, especially with us right now, septic systems. And like, I mean, maybe it's the narcissist in me, but like, we put so much stuff online about septic systems and people saw us grow and with the black machinery and our branding, much like what you're doing. And I feel like it was created this hype around septic systems. Everyone was like, damn, there must be a lot of money in septic systems then. And then now I feel like there's so many guys that are doing septic systems around us that just have pickup truck, dump trailer, rented 5-6 ton machine, which is awesome because everybody has to start somewhere. But I just find like right now we're in this cycle of competitiveness. We have overhead. We have a big office, 20 something people out there. We have to factor that in where that guy doesn't have to. But then I always find like those guys that aren't charging enough, there's like a cycle. And all of a sudden you stop seeing them on the bids against you because they realize, well, I can't make money at it doing it for this. But I guess, how do you combat the competitiveness? And I guess, what's the market like where you are?
Yeah, I have to say the last 2 years have gotten tighter again. We're not winning as many bids. There's more competition getting into it. And it's just the cycle of it. But we're here to stay. And we're not here to grab a couple systems and then go on to something else. We're going to keep advertising. We're going to keep getting into different technology. We're going to get into the sites that nobody else has the expertise to figure out. We're making the connections with PEs, like designers and stuff like that. We're becoming the authority. So the PEs come to us and they say, hey, here's this site. What technology do you want to use here? And, we say, oh, here, this is perfect for Sledgehammer, or this is perfect for Elgin.
You guys have Elgin?
Yeah, we do.
Nice. Yeah. We do a ton of Elgins. Like, that's one of our main systems that we put in.
Nice. Yeah, we love it. We just collaborated. Our latest video just came out 2 days ago. We just collaborated with Elgin. They donated the Elgin modules for this veteran. And then the local supplier, Valley Farms, donated all of the pipe too to get this guy a cheap system. So we were able to put him in a system for very inexpensive because he was on a fixed income and he was a Vietnam vet. He had gone to Mexico and gotten in some motorcycle accident and didn't have much money. And he was all freaked out because the septic system wasn't working. And I'm like, my salesman was like, dude, if you ever come across any veterans that need a system, we love those situations where we can donate material to someone in need, especially a veteran, because they're a veteran-owned company. They hire veterans. They're just trying to help veterans, succeed when they get back from service and stuff. So that was a very rewarding, fun collaboration. And our latest YouTube video kind of just talks a little bit about it.
That's really cool. Yeah, there's so many different types of systems and the technology behind them now. Like, we have like Waterloo up here, which is, acts like it has anaerobic digesters in them and the technology. And there's a recirc line on a lot of them that brings it through twice to get the effluent as clean as possible before we pump it out to that bed. And the sand specs are so much different now. Like, it's not just regular bank sand, like there's, your silt content has to be less than this, but then we want your percolation time between this and this, and your grain size has to be more coarse. And there's a lot of really cool technology behind septic systems. And I could nerd out for hours talking about septic systems because I love it. And we have a sand pit. And we make like 7 different types of sands for the different systems, Vantex and all that stuff. It's just really cool. And I think a lot of people from the outside looking in, they don't understand, I guess, what goes into a septic system and understanding, well, not only just the cost or the money behind it, but the technology that goes into, when you flush your toilet, what happens? It's really cool.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, there's no new water on the earth. all the water we're using has been reused for thousands of years. So that's crazy to think about, but it's actually makes your job that much more important that, hey, we're using that resource. We're putting it back into the ground. We're letting it evaporate off after it's treated properly. And so those things are really cool. I was going to ask you how the pit's going, because I knew fairly recently you guys bought the property and we're like starting to open it up. So it was kind of interesting to know how that all was going.
It's really cool. It's a lot of fun. For us, I think recently we just passed 2 more specs. For us, it's just, working with our good friends over at GIP that actually allowed us to come in and do this and do, kind of like a lease deal there. And we're going to be opening a second pit next year as well. And that's going to be really cool. But it's just finding the different sands and the different specs. It's really cool. And I think a lot of people from the outside looking in, I always was like, I want to vertically integrate, right? Like sand for us was the most used product on our spreadsheet, right? I mean, we use a lot of gravel, but we use a lot of sand, because not only that, you got sand fill for backfilling around houses, backfilling around your tanks, you're using sand fill because you don't need to use the expensive septic sand around it. So I was like, oh, this is going to be great. Our profit margins are going to go up so much higher. But like all we ended up doing was we had the sand pit, but we ended up just like spending more and putting more cost out to hopefully drive revenue, because now we're selling to the public. But it's almost its own little separate business now, like the aggregate side of it. And Ken White Construction essentially pays Ken White Sand and Soil for its own aggregates. We obviously get a good deal. So if we need to be competitive, we can be. But there's a lot of cost behind operating the pit. I mean, you got to strip the land, you got to push off the topsoil. Then after everything's all taken out and screened and brought there, you truck it, you got to do whatever. And then you got to rehab the pit on your way out, make sure you're all sloped at 3-to-1. Like there's a lot of cost to it, but it's probably the most fun thing, I get to do. Like if there's a day where I'm like, I had nothing on my schedule, which is rare, but if it happens, I want to be out at the sand pit on a hot summer day, just slinging sand in the dozer, in the old 8640 John Deere, and just no one there but me and just having a ball. So it's a lot of fun. But people, I think from the outside looking in, probably think like, wow, if I had my own pit, my own rock quarry, oh man, my profit margins could be so much higher. No, you just end up spending the cost on other stuff to get the sand or to sell more of it or something like that.
It's so heavy, overhead heavy, this whole industry. Doesn't matter. You want to get into crushing, we recycle concrete here. And I thought, oh man, that'd be so cool. Buy our own crusher. I'm like, no, we're not buying our own crusher. We get 20 grand or something. They'll crush a big pile for us. And you're like, wow, that was 20 grand. But yeah, the machine is hundreds and hundreds of thousands. And then you got to have the stacker, and then you got to have the breakers and the excavators and the loaders. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that's a whole nother ball game. So it's all cool. It's fun. And it's a great industries to be in. But man, if you don't like high, overhead, and if you don't like debt, don't get into it.
I say the same thing. It's definitely not for the faint of heart. I mean, like I always laugh, like I have a GC business as well now, and engineers or designers will charge themselves out at like $225 an hour, and I get their invoices in, and I'm doing up the POs, and I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm getting 220. I had to spend $600,000 on a piece of machinery. Then I got to spend $1,200 a day in fuel. Then I got to pay somebody $40 an hour to sit in it. Then and to get $225 an hour, but then and I know that the engineers, they went through schooling and all that stuff, but I'm just like saying, like, the overhead, you're so right. It's like you have to have such a high stress tolerance, and essentially it's a massive risk, this industry. It's how much risk and stress can you really take on? And that allows you to grow and do as much as you can. But there's a lot to it.
I don't know where people stand with Dave Ramsey and stuff. It's really cool, some of the stuff he talks about, but I would never be where I'm at if I was a cash only guy. For example, back in I think it was 18, I paid $100,000 for a 10-acre lot, and we built our shop for like $500,000. It's worth $1.5 million now. So I tripled my money through borrowing money, basically. And so I tell people, don't build just a pole barn because it's cheap for your business. Look at your excavating company also as a real estate investment. Put some money into the equity of your company, I'll say, that you can pull back out that makes your company worth more. And so it's just stuff like that you look for, and like getting into the GC business, like on your end, that's smart. I keep thinking about, well, maybe we should do like build rentals or something like that too. So it's kind of cool to hear you doing that gig too. It's just keep your debt load at management levels. Don't go out and buy the Chevy Escalade and the big cigar boat and, all that kind of stuff. But I always say, if I'm paying on, a few pieces of equipment, if I'm paying them off every 5 years, I'll keep buying new stuff. Like we paid off all our vac trucks and our dump truck. And I think we're only paying on one excavator, the hydrovac. And now we just bought a brand new vac truck again. So that's a third vac truck, like a 5,000 gallon truck. And it was like $380,000. And I'm like, should we do? I mean, that's a payment again. And so, yeah, it seemed like the right time again to reinvest in the further expansion of the brand and the company. And, sure enough, the 2015 threw a rear end differential and through a turbo and this, that, and other thing. I'm like, you know what? It's time to maybe move some stuff. And we're on the path to just, go up with the economy with new stuff as you're getting in. So keep your long-term goggles on, play the long game, find those times when it's time to invest and do it, and then pay stuff off. And it's been fun. It's been a good business to be in.
It's interesting, especially that, like this year we had a couple dump trucks come up and be done and paid for. And we're like, oh yes, they're done and paid for. Well, I just got a mechanics bill for $11,000 for that truck. And then actually just before this call, my coordinator called me and said, oh, we were at the pit on the scales and Connor noticed an air leak in his truck. So we need all new air dryer and all new wet tanks because they rusted out. And I'm like, see, it always is the way. As soon as something, so you either have parts or payments, and I said that I had a podcast from Blue Collar Contracting, and I was saying the same thing. It's like parts or payments. It's one or the other. Especially our dump trucks, we're getting all the time. They're outright. So it's like, okay, great. It's paid for. It's nice to have stuff paid for. Don't get me wrong, but when you have payments on something, you also aren't getting $20,000 repair bill, $5,000 here, $1,000 here, $1,200 here, free here. It's as soon as they're paid for, man, they just get rid of them because it's just, you're going to start putting money into the parts and stuff. But if the economy turns down and you don't have payments, you're not paying out parts because your machines aren't working and your overhead is lower, and you can sit a little bit longer if things are a little bit slower. But that's where risk comes back in, and the overhead, and you get that little twitch in you that's like, oh, it's pretty easy. I could go just buy that. It's a wild industry.
Yeah. Hey, funny story. Do you know that I met you at ConExpo?
Where?
Okay, at that, you did like a young industry thing out in the meet and greet area, or that little container.
Yes.
Yeah. So you did like, I don't know if it was a podcast or you just did.
It was a podcast. Yeah. With someone from AEM. Yeah.
Yeah. So you did the podcast, and I think you were trying to appeal to the younger crowd and stuff, and hear this 40-year-old guy comes up and says, hey, Taylor. And we took a picture and everything. But anyway, I was like, oh, I got to meet Taylor. He's there. And so we got a picture together, and it was just a quick thing. There was a bunch of other young kids around just yamming it up and stuff.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So I was like, I just had to mention that. I said, he probably never even remembers.
No, I generally do. There were so many people that day that I remember. I mean, faintly, I probably do. Yeah. But I mean, I appreciate you being there. And I look forward to this coming up show. Are you going to be coming in March?
Yeah, I'll be there. I generally come with NCon and help, there, we've been to Sweden and stuff. And so we generally host some demo days here every year for, demonstrations for NCons and stuff. So they generally take us over to ConExpo as well.
That's awesome.
Well, I'm pretty sure we'll be back again.
Sweet. Well, I appreciate you cutting out time to chat with us today on the podcast. And I really look forward to seeing you at ConExpo. Thank you. Thanks again. And we'll catch you at the show March 3rd to 7th.
Sounds awesome. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you, Dervin. This podcast is brought to you by our good friends over at John Deere Power Systems. Thank you very much. Have a great day.